Assalamu alaikum everybody. Welcome to today's episode of The Seeker. Today we will be talking about a topic that all of us at one stage in life or another have thought about. That topic is food and how in our community, based on various research results, food consumption has led to an increase in obesity. The rate varies from 2 to 55% among adult females and 1 to 30% in adult males. An analysis of 46 Muslim countries showed that the overall prevalence of obesity in these populations was 37.4%. Men and women were overweight in approximately 33 and 42.1% of the cases, respectively. We at Seekers Institute help people achieve a life that is worth living through the proven experience of experts as well as access to the right tools. As a matter of fact, in this episode, we will look at what it takes to make changes in our lives. My guest today will share with us her experience as a registered dietitian, a nutritionist, and a coach to share with us valuable insights about how we can start walking down the path of transformation. If you can make changes to the way you eat and treat your body, believe me, you can make changes in other areas of your life. After all, isn't that one of the biggest lessons we get from our spiritual practice of fasting? Remember, The Seeker is a show that gives you a safe platform to learn, to act, and to grow. We will be right back. Welcome back everybody to The Seeker. I am your host, Arshad Anwar, and I'm very happy to be joined with my guest today, YaQutullah I Muhammad. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited you're here. You know, all of us in Atlanta, we know you as the dietitian, the nutritionist. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
All right. So I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist with 15 years of experience. I really work with clients individually and in group settings to really focus on changes they can make to their nutrition. And I'm their nutrition coach and accountability partner.
Awesome. So a lot of hats there, even though it's kind of the same area, but you mentioned, so the words I picked up on was dietitian, nutritionist, coach. So what's kind of the difference between, at least the first two, dietitian and the nutrition? What's the main difference?
So the main difference, the dietitian basically completes a 9-month internship. There you can do a bachelor's or a master's combination in nutrition. And then you sit for a national board exam.
Okay.
So it's a big difference. And the nutritionist is, basically anyone who enjoys eating. Right.
So we're all nutritionists
Yeah.
in some sense of the word.
Definitely. But
we're
there's
just not
an
registered.
extra step, yes, for the dietitian.
Excellent. When it comes to how nutrition is approached in our community, the Muslim community in particular, what are some of the things you've noticed about how our community likes to approach this? Like, are they generally good about it? Are they not? Where do we land on the spectrum?
It really just depends on really the context and what we believe nutrition to be, right? So it really just depends on, holidays. It depends on, the context in which we're eating.
Yeah.
It depends on our personal health and wellness goals. So we can approach it from a number of different ways.
But is there a right and wrong? Like, can I say that my way, or this is the right way to eat and this is the wrong way to eat?
I wouldn't go as far as to say, okay, this is a right or wrong way to eat. The question is, what are your goals and what's the best way to approach or support your goals through nutrition? So.
And that's interesting you mentioned that, because it seems like, so you're kind of focusing on a more holistic approach rather than just like, hey, I want to figure out this area of my life, but there's other things that kind of influence that decision. Is that correct
well,
to say?
Well, definitely, because there's more. There's more to nutrition than just calories, right? So you want to approach it from a standpoint of, what's going to be most beneficial to me, and how do I adopt, something new that I may not have done previously, right? Yeah. And what's the best way to approach it?
So the connection here, so you're talking about goals. One goal a person might have is, I just want to be happy. And what makes me happy is not necessarily what's good for me, but how does that play into, a nutritional goal if my main aim is just to be happy and carefree? in my life?
It depends on what makes you happy. So that's why it's
Yeah.
important to really ask, when I'm working with clients, ask them, what makes you happy, right? And a lot of it may be focused on goals. Happy is not just in the moment, oh, I'm happy because I ate this donut, but it may be larger and I'm happy because I have a good quality of life, right?
Yeah.
And how does nutrition support that? So it really just depends on your level of happiness and what that means to you.
Excellent. And tell our audience just a little bit about, what nutrition does for our body. Meaning, what is it that our body is going to benefit from if we take care of this area of our lives?
Okay. Well, I mean, of course, our body is a trust from Allah, right?
Yeah.
It's an amana. So a lot of times when we look at nutrition and we look at how it's going to impact us, we also look at how can we worship better, right?
Yeah.
The fact that nutrition is going to impact how well we worship, right? How often we worship, the quality of our worship, and the quality of our life.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, it plays into so many different areas.
It is. And so faith is a big part of it for our community.
Huge part.
And what has been your experience with, as a practicing Muslimah, what is your experience with what you do and the faith that you've chosen to ascribe to?
Well, what I do is influenced by my faith, right? So
Yeah.
I think the biggest piece of it is to be well aware of how those interconnect, right? The faith piece, and then how does that translate to what I do, what I eat, how I stay active, right? Because they're very intertwined. And really just looking at realistically how they all play together. And then the piece of it, being a coach is looking at not only just nutrition and faith, but if I'm, supporting something or advocating for something, how much of that am I really doing, right? Like that crossover.
So that demonstrating or leading by action.
Leading by action, really.
Yeah. So what is one or more teaching from our faith that you particularly find that's very important or that you connect with personally as well?
I connect with small changes, consistent habits, right? And that's taking on anything, whether it be nutrition or finances or whatever, but specifically for nutrition, small steps, because you don't want to provide too much too soon, right? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the way the revelations came, it came in bits and pieces, right? So a lot of it is with nutrition information, you want to make sure that you're promoting and encouraging small steps, right? That can be done in increments, right? Realistically, especially when you talk about, okay, we want this to last longer than a month. We're not thinking in necessarily the New Year's resolution thought phase. We want this to last longer. We want it to become more of a lifestyle change. So I find that small steps are easier to adopt and kind of adapt to, because you can do a little bit at a time.
Realistic small steps. I think those are the words that you use. And,
definitely.
And you made a beautiful connection to how the revelation came in pieces. And that was in order for people to be able to apply it correctly over time. There's another interesting statement from the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said that the deeds that are most loved by Allah are those that are consistent, even if they're little. So there's obviously a lot of examples that we have in our faith that gives us this teaching. On the other hand, let's kind of flip the script here and say, okay, this is great, look at your context, look at your surroundings, your holistic approach, what are your goals? But what happens when a person does not take nutrition seriously?
Well, it really just depends on the person and what they have going on, right? So we know that nutrition impacts quality of life, right? Oftentimes, my clients will come and say, I'm borderline diabetic, or now I'm diabetic. So at that point, you want to ask the person, what's important to you, right? Because a lot of times, the doctor may recommend meds and they may not take them, or we recommend dietary intervention and they may not do it, right? So it really goes back to what's important to the person. A lot of it is looking at not only maintaining optimal quality of life, but preventing further deterioration of health. So it really just depends on how you feel, right, about your health and how you want your quality of life to look. Now, on the broad end or far end of the spectrum, if you don't invest in your health and wellness, then not only is your quality of life impacted, but I mean, we're all, going to meet our demise, but while you're here, why not prevent kidney disease? Or why not, prevent, diabetes that affects your vision, right? And your kidney health, right? I see some patients who really don't care, right? And that's up to the person.
Yeah.
But, renal failure, right? Blindness. I mean, there's a lot of different, health challenges that you deal with when you don't take care of yourself and you don't invest in yourself.
And I think it's important to understand that if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not only necessarily harming ourselves, but there's people that love us, that are around us as well. When you mention a holistic approach, I think it's also important, and even as a person of faith, it's important to consider the rights of our families, for example. If we're going to take care of our families, we have to take care of ourselves.
Definitely. And sometimes I have clients that come and say, wow, I really need to get on the ball because I need to be around for my grandkids or, my family and things like that. So it really just goes back again to the person and what's important to them. I can't make something important to you that's not important to you.
Yeah. And so, I mean, people need to realize it. So maybe that's a first point of realization people need to come to, is what you keep hitting the point right there is what's important to you, and how important is it to ask that question? Is what I would ask you.
I think it's very important. Otherwise, you're just, you're spitting out everything, right? And you don't know how to really tailor it to fit that person and their goals.
Amazing. So let's move away from nutrition just for a little bit, because I know that's your expertise, your area, but you have passions beyond just food. Yeah. So tell us about some of your hobbies. What do you like to do for fun?
I like to run, more walking now in the past few days. Yeah. But traveling is really fun. I love to travel. But I would say definitely kind of, running and traveling are my top two.
So what is the longest distance that you've run? Because you've run some big races here in Atlanta, right?
A few, yeah. I did, I think my longest distance really was the half marathon. I did a couple of half marathons. I did like a 10-miler, PNC 10-miler, which is cool. But for the most part, I like running, especially in nice areas.
I ran the Hunger Walk, which I think was about 3 miles or something, or 5 miles.
It's usually a 5K. It's like 3.1 miles. It's usually in March.
I was very proud of myself.
Oh, yes.
For running that.
Yes.
It's not 10 miles, but working my way up there.
That's right. That's how you get started.
Small steps.
Small steps.
Consistent.
Yes.
And realistic,
yes.
right? So
done as a group, and it's fun.
And definitely fun. So what about travel? What is it about travel that really excites you?
Oh, wow. Travel, meeting new people, new experiences, new food to experience.
Hey. So. Talking about food, we were, as we're filming here, we were talking about ordering lunch.
Oh, yeah.
And I noticed something very interesting, that I ordered, or I put an order for a burger, and I noticed that you put an order for a vegetarian dish. But then you said a word that was very new to me. And it was something with a P.
Pescatarian.
Pescatarian. What is a pescatarian?
Okay, so pescatarian is basically, so I'm pescatarian, so I consume fish, right? Okay. And it's basically, you consume fish, but you don't consume other meats for the most part, like red meats and things like that. Okay. It's predominantly just kind of fish, right? And then of course you do vegetables and things like that. So fish and seafood.
Now, I might get a little personal here, but is that a decision you made based on health reasons, or is it a decision you made based on faith or ethical?
I would say more health reasons.
Okay.
And then sometimes when you go out to eat, you may not have halal options.
That's true. Yeah.
So you have to make modifications, and you have to see what the menu offers. Or
I think all Muslims at some point in their life have been pescatarians.
Right. And say, okay, do you have fish? Maybe I'll do fish, or I'll do a vegetarian option.
Anytime I go to McDonald's, I'm pescatarian.
Okay. Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. So, going back to what you said earlier about, people defining what's important to them, when it comes to you functioning as a coach, right? How do you empower people to make these changes in their lives?
For me, it always goes back to empowering them from where they are, or meeting them where they are, right? And then kind of determining what their next step is going to be based on the information they provide to me. Yeah. A lot of it is also empowering people by providing support and accountability, right? Okay. So some people come to me and say, I need somebody to call me once a week.
Wow.
Or somebody to provide some type of structure. Otherwise, I'm all over the place. And I find that really important, especially when you're working with someone new who needs to just kind of lay like groundwork, foundation. Like, these are new habits for me. How do I adjust to them? Slowly, little by little.
So there's a lot of conversation about change, right? And how much do you find that our community, for example, is resistant to change? Because I'm sure you deal with people from different cultures, different backgrounds. What is it like for people when they're dealing with these changes? Are they resistant?
Sometimes you do encounter resistance. I think that's a natural part of life, especially if it's a new concept and I've, not been exposed to this before. How do I approach this? Am I resistant because I just don't know? Am I resistant because, well, I haven't been exposed to it before? This is not how I was brought up, right? So just approaching it in a safe space, but a way where it can be understood, and then it could be adapted to your lifestyle. And I mean, resistance, it happens, but it's not something that we can't work through, right? With the proper information and the right support.
Awesome. So when it comes to people's cultures, right? I think we talked about this before, you and I, but when it comes to people's cultures and the choices they make or the habits they develop, you have a very interesting take on this, but should we tell people to abandon, what their families have been doing for generations because it may not meet today's health standards, or?
Definitely not. We want to kind of celebrate our cultures, of course. We want to celebrate our cultural foods and things like that. But we also want to look at, where I was 10 or 15 years ago versus where I am now, right? And looking at what your health would look like. So maybe your health changes, right? So there may be a need for some type of modification or adaptation, right? So it's not that you can't celebrate your cultural foods, but you want to make sure that you are, doing it the right way.
Excellent. So I would like for you to give our audience one action item. And that one action item is something that, any principle that you can use from your line of work that our audience can actually adapt in many areas of their lives. Is there something you can think about that they can do on that level?
I would say start small and keep it consistent. And that goes from, whether or not you want to increase your water intake or you want to increase your physical activity or you want to add, more fruits and vegetables to your meal planning. Just start small and then build upon that.
That's actually very interesting that you mentioned that, because I've had phases where I've said, I'm going to change the way I eat, or I'm going to, add, going from drinking 2 glasses of water a day to 10 glasses of water a day. And it's never lasted. And I think your point about being consistent, real, small little changes here and there makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I don't know. I'd like to thank you guys for having us out today, which
Awesome.
is really cool to kind of share. And I look forward to sharing even more.
No, excellent. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and it means the world when we can educate our audiences on meaningful aspects of their life. And nutrition, what we fuel our body with is an absolute important part of who we are.
Absolutely.
And who we choose to be. As you're saying, it's very important for us to decide what's important to us.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll be right back with my closing thoughts. Here's a sneak peek at The Seekers season finale.
So 97% of the decisions we make are at an unconscious level. Your choice of color, let's say favorite color. So today you like this color, tomorrow you don't like it. It's an indication that something is going internally, and it tells a lot about the emotions we're feeling, the behaviors.
Our guest today delved into how important the choices we make about our food are to our lives. More than that, she gave us principles that can be used for helping us achieve a higher quality of life. At Seekers Institute, we show you a path to transformation from the inside out, understanding that your intention to make a change or improvement is the first thing we can all start to work on. According to how committed that intention is, your actions will either follow through with a plan to execute or let a great opportunity slip away. Our Prophet ﷺ said, Allah doesn't look at your attire nor at your appearance, rather He looks at your hearts and your actions. A desire to transform is not enough. You need a plan and the right tools to make it happen. So, now that you know, Seekers Institute can show you how.